Last week I shared with you my knitting superpower, which is knitting and reading. This week I've asked all of you what your knit or crochet superpower is, and boy, did you deliver. I have my Sidekick toaster here, and we are ready to react to your knitting and crochet superpowers. Grab a drink because we have over 50 different superpowers to cover. Let's just dive right in with the first one. Finishing something even if I hate it. Okay, you probably know how I feel about this. Sometimes you do need to finish a project because you've promised it to somebody else, or maybe you just want the finished object, but you're not enjoying the process of it. But I do think that it's important to enjoy your knitting and crochet. So if you're really not enjoying a project, I always recommend setting it aside for a few days and really thinking about why you're not liking it. Is it because something is going wrong? That's usually what it is for me. Like, I'm doubting something about it, that maybe it's not fitting me right and I need to make a change, but I'm just like not wanting to like rip back or whatever. But if you really hate something, just ask yourself, is it truly worth it? But I think that having those skills to just like finish something even if you're not enjoying it is why we have people who are able to make the same thing over and over again and sell amazing handmade items. So I do think this is a superpower, and good job to you. Super speed. We had quite a few people say that their superpower is super speed, and I am very impressed with you. I don't think I'm a particularly fast knitter or crocheter. I just think that I knit a lot, so I always admire people who can knit really, really fast. Knitting gifts for my husband without him knowing. Ooh, how do you do this? I feel like that would be hard unless your spouse or partner is out of the house for a good part of the day. Oh wow, here comes the sun. Oh my gosh, hold on. All right, that's a little bit better. Maybe a little too dark, but what can we do? Okay, so that's impressive that you can knit gifts for your husband without him even knowing it. We need some tips and tricks for this one because, I don't know, Kent and I work together. We live in a one-bedroom apartment together. It would be really hard to sneakily make anything for him. I guess maybe if I was out of the house, I could be working on a project, a secret project for him, but usually he just tells me what he wants and then I make him something. Lately, he's been wanting a lot of hats. Ooh, this one is good. Knitting while on the exercise bike or treadmill. This is a really great skill. I feel like it is hard to do, like harder than just like walking around because you have to keep the same pace. I used to do this a little bit back many years ago when I lived in Texas and our apartment had a gym. I would get up before I worked like at school as a teacher and go work out and knit and walk on the treadmill. And I was always worried that like my ball of yarn would fall and then get like wrapped up into the treadmill. So props to you for doing the exercise bike and the treadmill. Lace surgery. Wow, that's impressive. I cannot say that I am the greatest at fixing lace. I can like drop things down and fix or add in maybe like a yarn over. What ends up happening to me a lot is I will have a yarn over in the wrong place. So I have to like drop down, move the yarn over, move this SSK or knit two together. But lifelines here are going to be your best friend. So definitely use lifelines when you're knitting lace. I thought this one was really cool. It says, this is actually two different people, but kind of a similar thing. I majored in painting and fine arts, so I love and believe I'm good at pairing colors. And then the other person said just picking colors. I admire this one because I don't feel like I'm great at picking colors. I feel like I am doing better at picking colors that I know I love and staying away from trying to like, sometimes I would tell myself, branch out a little bit, try something new. And then that yarn ends up sitting in my stash because I don't actually want to use it. So I feel like I'm better at sticking true to the colors I love, but actually putting colors together when it comes to color work and things, I had such a hard time last year with the Alpenglow, putting together colors for that for the Rhinebeck make-along. So I admire this one a lot. And if you're good at picking colors, it is definitely a superpower. This person says, I always get perfect gauge and like a shrug emoji. So this is not possible, just FYI, to always get perfect gauge. I do believe you when you say like you've always gotten perfect gauge on your project so far, but there's no standard gauge. Everyone's gauge in a pattern is based off of the designer's gauge, and we all knit differently. So if you knit the same designer all the time, and you can use their same needle size and produce the same fabric as them, that's just a coincidence. So if you feel like, oh my gosh, I can never get perfect gauge, nothing is wrong with you. Perfect gauge doesn't actually exist. We are all different the way that we knit and crochet. We are not machines. No lingering whips. I tend to either finish or frog projects. I am trying to be this way. I feel like I've done a better job over the last year of not leaving things. Like right now, I'm trying to finish up a sweater that I feel like is lingering because it didn't work out the way that I wanted to, and I just have to keep working on it. Actually, it's sitting right here next to me, and I am making myself do 30 minutes a day on it. Knitting a sock in a day from memory. Okay, this is very impressive for two reasons. One, knitting a sock from memory, that means you've memorized all of the different parts of the sock, all of your own stitch counts, and that in itself is very impressive. But knitting a sock in one day, I don't think I've ever done that before. Maybe that will be a little challenge for me this week or this year during sock week. Although I feel like knitting that many stitches on tiny little needles hurts my hands. So I don't know if I want to do this, but I am very impressed by it. Knitting color work in the dark or just knitting in the dark in general. Wow, knitting color work in the dark? How do you do that? How do you know? Like, especially if it's not the same color work the whole way through. I could see if you're a two-handed color work knitter and you're doing 2x2 color work and you just, it's routine, you know, your body, your muscles memorize it. But how do you do it if it's a chart and things change? I feel like I need to know more about this. Making modifications to patterns / math skills is viewed with awe. I forget how cool it is to be able to do. Yes, this is so incredible. If you're able to take a pattern, especially sweaters or other things that fit, and modify them to fit you better, that is challenging, and it is definitely a superpower. Mine would be knitting in the dark with black yarn or falling asleep while continuing to knit. I know who this person was, and they do knit with a lot of black yarn and a lot of purple yarn, and often in the dark because we Zoom sometimes and I see all the lights are out and they're knitting, and I don't know how they do it. I guess when you don't have to look at your knitting, that is going to help you, but falling asleep while continuing to knit, that is very funny. I think another person actually said that too, and it may be in here coming up or not, but that they would actually be knitting and just fall asleep and like their muscles just keep on doing the same thing. This one made me giggle. How slow a knitter I am. If anyone wants to slow down, I'm your gal. Take pride in the knitting itself. Being fast or slow, it really doesn't matter. I'd say knitting while reading subtitles. Okay, this is a really interesting skill. Sometimes it's hard to understand a TV show. Actually, I was just talking with my mom on the phone, and she was talking about this article that she read or something on TV that she saw about how difficult it has become to understand actors in TV shows, and how more and more people are actually needing subtitles for same language, like verbal stuff. So like they're speaking English, we still need English subtitles. I'm somebody who always watches with subtitles anyway. I just enjoy having the subtitles there. But I think what's really impressive is if you're using or watching something that's in another language and reading English subtitles, because that means you can't miss a single thing. I don't understand this person. I enjoy weaving in ends. There's quite a few superpowers in here of people doing things that I find unenjoyable, like weaving in ends. But I can see how it could feel very good to have the finishing work done. So if you're somebody else who enjoys weaving in ends, I feel like you are very lucky. Knitting with my eyes closed, as you know. I also know who wrote this one, and sometimes they will be caught on camera just eyes closed knitting like this, which is very, very funny. I can knit both continental and English. Wow, that's really impressive. I can knit continental and English if I am doing something that's two-handed. So I can knit continental like semi-okay on its own, but I feel a lot more comfortable when I have a yarn in my right hand, a yarn in my left hand, and I'm doing both with color work knitting. If I just have to knit a single strand, it's going to be English style, and I hold my yarn in my right hand. Mirror knitting. Flat stockinette or ribbing, I don't have to turn my work. This is really, really cool. If this is something that you haven't seen before, there are people like this person who will knit across from right to left. If you're a right-handed knitter, right to left. And then instead of turning their flat piece to then work right to left again, they work the next row from left to right. So they're never having to flip their piece, and they're kind of making stitches a little bit differently. Is there anyone out there who remembers the, I think it was 2007 or maybe 2006, there was this entrelac scarf that everybody was making. And entrelac requires these little bits of stitches that you work like back and forth on like 8 stitches, and it's such a pain. I don't know why it had such a hold on us. I feel like it was a Jared Flood pattern, and we all were obsessed with Nora. Is anyone going back to this time with me? So a lot of people were learning to do this mirror knitting, so you didn't have to flip back and forth on those tiny sets of stitches. So there was a time where I knew how to do this, but definitely don't anymore. I thought this one was really interesting. It says making a ritual out of gauge swatching and tinking. So it almost sounds to me like you kind of romanticize it and make it part of the project and enjoyable rather than treating it like something you just have to get through to get to the fun part. I love this way of thinking about things and really making gauge swatching something that is enjoyable and useful for when you get to your actual project. And then I also love that you say making a ritual out of tinking as well. So that means that when you're having to pull stuff back, instead of treating it again like a punishment, you're treating it like something that is important to the project. Knitting 2 socks at a time. Ooh. I am always in awe of people who do this. It is not something that I enjoy doing. I know people will do it on like one really long, like 60-inch magic loop needle or maybe 2 circular needles and have 2 socks at a time on the needles. I have done this in the past enough to know that I don't like doing it. All my yarn feeds perfectly to my needles, no snags, tangles, or pulling an arm length at a time. Really? How do you do that? I don't have a cake with me, but I do have a ball of yarn. I feel like I always have to like knit, 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 and then I'm like, you know, knit, knit, knit. I took a class one time from the yarn harlot, Stephanie Pearl McPhee, and it was about knitting efficiency. And one of the things she said that stuck with me, even though I don't actually do it, is to go ahead and pull off like several arm lengths of yarn and then knit, 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 knit. Then stop, pull off several arm lengths of yarn and knit, 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 knit. Instead of doing like 5 stitches, pull, 5 stitches, pull. And that makes you a whole lot more efficient. Okay, wow, this one is impressive. I can knit brioche while reading. Whoa, that is very impressive because brioche involves yarn overs and knit 2 togethers and purl 2 togethers, which means you really have to have muscle memory in order to do this. Knitting clockwise. I'm left-handed. Anyone else a lefty out there? I know several people in my life that I know in person that are left-handed knitters. So before we were just talking about knitting from right to left and then left to right, there are some people that only knit left to right because they are true. Well, I hate saying true because you're a left-handed person if you like use your left hand for the majority of things, right? Is that how we define things? But not all left-handed people are left-handed knitters. They may just hold the yarn in their left hand, but that doesn't make you a left-handed knitter. A left-handed knitter in this sense is that you actually move in the other direction. Can be really challenging for lefties though, because you then have to reverse things in patterns. Like if you want it to look the same, you might have to take a knit two together and do an SSK instead, so that everything you do looks according to pattern. But I'm starting to see, I feel like more and more people being vocal about being a left-handed knitter that knits from left to right. I feel like it's really important to talk about that and share that, because it's kind of a micro community within the knitting world. This one is a two-parter. It says, my mom doesn't knit or crochet, but she has a superpower. She is great at frogging. She loves to frog and can untie every knot in yarn, yarn and weaves in, yarn weaves into FOs. I might have messed that up reading that. Basically, this person's mom untangles yarn for them and weaves in their ends. Like, that is a superpower. You have a very special sidekick that is there to do all of the things that are super annoying. I wish that this guy could do the same. I get a kick out of fixing drop stitches and fixing knitting and purling mistakes. Really? I wouldn't say I get a kick out of it, but it does feel really nice to know how to fix mistakes in knitting. If you're a newer knitter, or even not a newer knitter, sometimes it takes a long time to get that confidence to try to fix things, but I would encourage you to just maybe have a little project, maybe something that you don't really care about, or a little swatch that you can mess around with and practice picking up stitches, dropping stitches, changing knits to purls. Being able to read your knitting and fix your knitting is definitely a superpower into its own. I make blankets like some kind of machine. Really? What kind of blankets are you making? How many blankets are you making? And who are they for? I've been a little bit of a blanket machine myself, I feel like, this year, but most of these blankets that I have made, well, I finished 2 this year. They were started 5 years ago. So I wouldn't say that is machine status, but I would love to know more about the blankets that you're making. We are halfway through our knitting superpowers. I hope you are enjoying them as much as I am. If you can relate to any of these knitting superpowers, or if you have a special one of your own, definitely leave it down in the comments. I want to see more of us expressing ourselves and sharing what we're proud of, because I think that it is such a good thing to recognize your strength and what you can do. Also, if you're like seeing these things and you're like, I can't do that, don't stress about this. These things are just for fun. It's fun to share, you know, in this small knitting and crochet community that we are in. Things that only other people would understand is something to brag about. Let's brag about them. So leave your knitting and crochet superpowers, down in the comments. I want to see what you can do. I automatically weave in my ends, then later go to do it and realize I already did it. Wow. I don't even know what to say there. Like, that just means that you are just so efficient and that weaving in ends doesn't feel like a chore to you. I aspire to be more like you. Guesstimating how much yarn to leave for a long tail cast on. We were just talking about this on a recent podcast episode. Somebody asked, how do you know how to measure out your yarn for a long tail cast on? And one of the things that I shared is that you can take 2 balls of yarn, and a lot of you mentioned you can also take 1 ball of yarn and take the strand from the inside and the outside and use that, so that you don't actually have to guess, because your 2 strands are continuous and then you just clip one off when you're done casting on. But being able to actually guess and get it right time over time is very impressive. Focusing on one whip. Truly, this may be the greatest superpower of them all. I feel like I'm not alone in saying that I cannot just have one whip. I may have one that I'm focusing on, but what happens when you like mess up or get mad at it? What do? Do you just take a break and like do another hobby? Can you explain, please? I'm really good at somehow getting free or cheap yarn. Oh, this is a really interesting superpower. How do you do it? Are you shopping the sales? Are you just like right place, right time kind of thing, where if people are letting go of the yarn or destashing, you're like right there on it. I feel like there's so many people in the knitting and crochet community that have more yarn than they can use, or have yarns that is no longer interesting to them, so they're wanting to like sell it or give it away to somebody else. So if you're willing to do the work and search and follow people on Instagram and follow those destashes and get onto Ravelry, you may find some really good deals. Shopping for yarn while I have 100 other projects. Is this a superpower? No, I'm just kidding. I know that you are not alone in this. We all love to shop for yarn. In fact, let me tell you something that will make you feel better. Knitting and crocheting is one hobby, and collecting yarn is a different hobby entirely. In fact, it's like two different jobs. If you were in a large business, you would have a buyer, and then you would have a creator. If you want to justify it, just say you're slipping into your other role as a yarn curator. I can knit for hours and hours and not feel time passing by or any pain in my joints. Wow, good for you. Of course, I'm going to say be careful, because overuse injury can sneak up on you, and sometimes once you do have that overuse injury, it really never goes away, I find. I used to love knitting on those really small circular needles for my socks, and I feel like it started to bother me in my forearms and those tendons and muscles, and I noticed that when I wasn't working on the small circumference, I felt a lot better. But ever since then, I've never really been able to knit or crochet as long as I was before those small circular needles. So please just be careful. And if you need to follow somebody to help you with like exercises and stuff for knitting and crochet, the Knitting PT is an awesome account to follow. I need exactly 30 seconds to figure out a new technique. 30 seconds? That's really impressive. I feel like you are somebody who can like just learn things really fast and hang on to them, which is an amazing superpower. I definitely am not that way. I need a little bit longer to absorb things, and I also need to see something at least 10 times before it sticks in my memory. I love Sleeve Island. Really? Do you really? How? Why? So one thing I feel like that has helped me a lot with my sleeves is actually working them before I finish the body of a sweater. So I may do the neck and the increases and like join under the arm, try it on, make sure everything is fitting, and then I might start a sleeve. And then I'll work a little more on the body, and then maybe I'll start the second sleeve. But I feel like there's no better feeling than having the sleeves done before you finish the body of a sweater. Speed. I can purl 100 stitches a minute. What? Okay, hold on. We gotta test this one. This is what we're gonna do. I just grabbed my simplest project right now. I'm not gonna purl, I am going to knit, but I'm gonna take my adorable toaster marker and we're going to put it here. And then we're gonna put 60 seconds on the clock here, and I'm gonna see how many stitches that I can knit in a minute. Ready? Go. Okay, here goes the time. All right, I was counting in my head because, I don't know, I guess I have this thing where I just can't help but counting. And I think I have 41, but let me check really quick. Yep, 41 stitches from my marker. So 100 purl stitches in a minute. I would say, yeah, you have super speed. This next one is really awesome. My friend sends me pics and asks me to identify the crochet stitch. I'm a pro. I find that amazing. I could probably do that with some knit stitches, but there's no way I can do that with crochet. I think it's amazing to be able to look at something and read it and kind of work backwards to deconstruct things. I used to want to do this all the time with sweaters that I saw in stores. I would look at them, or, you know, sweaters that people are wearing or sweaters that people have in TV shows. Where did the blanket go? I just realized. Uh-oh. I just realized that my beautiful crochet background is missing. Let's put that back. Anyway, it would be so cool to have that superpower and be able to just look at something and know exactly what you need to do. Reading while knitting, and it means counting in French, my language, in my head, while reading in English. Wow. So a bilingual version of this knitting and reading thing. I think that is very, very impressive. I always respect people who can speak multiple languages. I think that's an incredible thing to know how to do. And it's really interesting, like, you know, the language that you think in versus the language that you are speaking or reading in this case. So definitely a superpower. Okay, this one is a little bit sad, but it also kind of made me giggle, and you put it on here, so. This one says, working on a project just to break up with the one who it was made for. I know this isn't technically a superpower and you are just venting. One, I hope you are doing okay. You're better off without that person. It always works out that way, I promise. This has actually happened to me before, 2 times actually. I was working on a project for a family member of somebody that I was dating, and then we broke up. I don't remember what I did. This was like 10 years ago, 8 years ago maybe. And then it also happened with me and Kent, my current husband. I was needle pointing a belt for him. And even though I like kind of knew we were gonna break up, I like was still working on the belt for him, like angry working on the belt. I don't know why. But we did end up breaking up, but then we got back together. So that can happen too. Usually though, I feel like if you're breaking up with somebody, there's a reason. But there is like this whole curse thing in knitting and needlepoint. I don't know if it's the same in crochet, so please let me know. But in knitting, there's a sweater curse that you shouldn't knit a sweater for somebody that you're not married to, because then you're gonna break up. And then in needlepoint, it's a belt. So how funny that when I started making a belt for Kent, we did indeed break up. I never have problems with yarn barf, and I always start from the middle. My fingers can just feel the right start. Ooh, that's a really good skill to have. I find that even when I wind my own cakes, I still get yarn barf, I guess because I'm kind of winding things a little too tight. I recently saw somebody on Instagram make a reel about that they always double wind their cakes. So they'll wind it the first time, like winding it off of a Swift from a skein, and then they'll rewind it a second time, because the second time that you wind it, you have a little bit of a more even tension coming from a cake than coming from a skein, and your cake will be a little bit bigger and there won't be as much tension on the yarn. I've never found it to actually be a problem to not like double wind everything, but I thought that was really interesting. So what do y'all do? Do you just wind once, or do you wind again after you've wound it into a cake? I love when I have to start over. I like the feeling of being more sure of what I'm doing the second time. This is such an interesting mindset to have. I do find that especially when I'm starting something complicated like a sweater or maybe a shawl, I usually have to cast it on more than once. Like I've cast it on, it didn't work out, and then I cast it on again. But I always feel frustrated about it. And you're saying that you actually like it because you feel more confident when you're doing it a second time. So I think I'm gonna have to adopt this mindset, because this is such a better way to think about things. Instead of being let down, like you've let yourself down because you're doing it a second time, you can just consider the first one a practice run, and that when you're doing it a second time, it's gonna be even more exact. When I started one of my current sweater whips, the Citrine Light, the first time I cast it on, I learned a lot, and then I also set it aside for like a couple of months and realized I wanted to make a different size. So I ripped it out, and when I cast it on the second time, what you're saying is so true. I actually not only felt better about what I was doing, but I actually changed things up and made it a little easier and a little neater. This person says casting on, LOL. So I think you mean that your superpower is that you have no problem casting things on and you cast on a lot of things. Hey, we've all been there. We all do that at one point in time. Maybe not all of us. There was somebody on here who only has one whip. What? These two are contrasting to each other, which is why I have them together, and I think it is very funny. The first person says, I am a one whip knitter most of the time, which makes it possible to knit a sweater in 7 days. But then the second person says, I wish it was finishing projects. I have about 14 works in progress. I am getting better. I don't think either one of these ways are like right or wrong. I still think it is a little bit of a superpower to have the discipline to only have one project that you're working on, and knitting a sweater in 7 days is definitely a superpower. But I also don't think it's a bad thing if you do have multiple whips. I think it can actually serve a purpose for having different projects that fit different times of day or activities that you are doing. So it's not necessarily like right or wrong here in this sense, but I do like that you're working on having fewer works in progress. I've definitely found for me that if I have less than like 3 or less projects, I'm a lot happier with things because I am making progress on every single one of them. Project organizing, separating yarn by project and bagging it. Wow, this is a really cool superpower to have. Sounds like you're a really organized person. I like to think that I am too. I do love to organize my projects. Sometimes this is just as much fun as knitting on them because you get to have that feeling of getting something accomplished and you get to see the potential in things. I don't always have a plan for my yarn, but I'm starting to buy more intentionally and only buy when I'm ready to do a project. But I do love that you like to go through and separate out your yarn and kind of kit it together yourself. Designing from a photo request. Okay, this is like the person that can look at a crochet stitch and just know what it is. But you can actually look at something and create a similar design. That is really, really cool. I absolutely love knitting sleeves. We have this in here again, another one that loves Sleeve Island. What do you love about knitting sleeves? And I guess the other question is, what do I not love about knitting sleeves? I think it's that they take way longer than I'm anticipating. So let me just leave you with this. Sleeves are actually about 1/3 of your sweater knitting. If you can start wrapping your mind around that, I think it starts to help you see the sleeves as a significant part of the project and not just like a little bit at the end. I can remember all of my yarns used and in what projects, making scrappy projects fun. Okay, this is incredible to me because I feel like I can't remember squat. I will show something on the podcast that I have knit in the last 6 months and I will completely blank on what it is. And I feel like, I don't know, my brain works differently, I guess. It just doesn't hold on to information like that. I don't know if it's so in the moment or if it's just going too fast or going too slow. I don't know what it is, but actually it's so funny being on YouTube and sharing my projects on like Instagram and things. You all will tell me things that I don't remember about my own projects. And so I just appreciate that because I feel like I have a whole community of people helping me remember things that I should already know. So being able to remember what yarns you've used in projects and then getting to enjoy them again as you put them into scrappy projects sounds really fun, and I wish I had this superpower. I found a way to crochet while holding my baby as she sleeps. Oh, that sounds amazing. This is funny because I can't remember who this was. I guess it was one of my friends that has kids and that knits, and I asked her, I was like, okay, I'm worried that if I have kids, I will not be able to knit anymore, like at all. And I'm sure that happens, you know, when your baby is really young or during really busy periods, or even when your kids are older, because there's just, you know, a lot going on. You're taking them places, you're being a part of the activity, and of course you want to be as present and in the moment as you can with your kids as much as possible, but you got to take care of you too. You got to knit and crochet. At least I know I will need that. So being able to hear that you can crochet while holding your baby is so amazing. And that friend that I asked that is a knitter that has kids was like, oh my gosh, yes, you can continue knitting while you have a baby, while you have kids. So that gives me hope. Ball winding a skein using only my neck as a stabilizer? What? That is really, really cool. So I guess you put it around your neck and then you're winding like this. Oh my gosh, doesn't that like hurt your shoulders? I feel like I'm already out of breath. I organize my project plans for the whole year, but I can make changes. So that's really cool. I love that you do set that up for yourself ahead of time. I think that that is something that is totally a superpower because it takes a lot of brain space to kind of organize things for the whole year. I love even more though that you already have in here that you can make changes. I think that I'm one of those people who used to feel like if I made a plan, that was it. And if I didn't stick to the plan, that I was failing. But what I've actually been learning is that making a plan is like step one. It is just the groundwork and the foundation. And people who are good at making plans and like getting things done are also good at changing their plans because they make the plan just to get a start and to see what is possible. And then as they go, they actually adapt and change. And that is the skill that I was lacking. So I really love that you do this for yourself. And I think that is super, super cool. I love mattress stitch. Just in case you are not familiar with mattress stitch, I think it has some other names too, maybe like invisible seam. Crocheters use this too, but I'm not sure if the name is interchangeable, but it is where you go back and forth from like one piece of fabric to the other like this, and then you pull it and it cinches in and it's pretty much invisible. It creates a selvage on the other side. I'm gonna be doing this soon when I finish my quadrophenia blanket that I'm working on. So I can't say I love mattress stitch, but it is pretty magical when it all like zips up and pulls together. Competition knitting, such as sock madness. Okay, what is sock madness? I need to know about this. Sounds like you're really good about like if you have a challenge, meeting that challenge. And I like to make challenges for myself too. I mean, we got sock week coming up. I always am trying to like organize my knitting in a way that I want to get certain things done. So I'm with you here. I don't know if I want to compete against other people, but I do like competing against myself. Quietly counting rows while being able to carry on an entire conversation at the same time. That is an impressive skill. I do find myself counting stitches sometimes, but I don't think I can like count and talk at the same time. So kudos to you. Superpower, maybe. I can change colors whenever I feel like it, regardless of the pattern. I think I would call that a superhero, or a superpower rather, because that means you have a lot of flexibility, and guess what? I don't have that. Making even stitches. My family says it looks like a machine did it. Wow, that is really impressive. We had a couple people say something similar, that their knitting is very even, their tension is very even, and it looks like a machine. That's okay if yours doesn't look like that. Mine doesn't look like it all the time. I feel like I can tell when I've set a project down and picked it back up later. There's a distinctive line sometimes in my knitting, but being able to make it look so even that it looks like a machine is a superpower for sure. Knitting while having conversations and maintaining eye contact. I think my knitting has disappeared from me here, but my other knitting that I have had sitting in my lap, I just broke my needle on, so I'm trying to resolve that right now. I have like 2 tabs pulled up with needle orders, which of course none of them are going to instantaneously get here, which is a problem. But anyway, I wanted to show you that I can knit while maintaining eye contact, but I just did a whole video about knitting and reading that is kind of similar to this, where you can practice knitting without looking down at your stitches. And you can do this in crochet, I'm assuming. I can't because I don't have those skills, but I feel like it is doable to teach yourself to be able to work knit stitches without looking down at every stitch. I still glance down about every 10 stitches or so if I need to, but being able to knit while maintaining eye contact is so great for staying in the moment with people and like letting them know that you're in the moment. You can knit in meetings, you can knit in the dark. I would say being able to maintain eye contact and conversations is a superpower for sure. This is our last one. This says, I can knit a pair of mittens in about 7 hours. Wow, that is very impressive. I have no clue how long it takes me to make certain things. People ask me that a lot, not knitters and crocheters, but friends, I guess, that are, you know, finding questions to show interest in my hobbies, which I love, will say like, you know, how long does it take you to make a sweater or make a pair of socks? And I'm just like, months? I don't know, hours? I would say maybe 30 hours for a pair of socks, but I actually don't know. So it's really cool that you know exactly how long it takes you to make a pair of mittens. If you know exactly how long something takes you, that you make a lot, then that must help you out, especially when you're trying to make gifts for somebody. You can say, okay, birthday party is on Saturday. If I do 2 hours today and 2 hours tomorrow and 3 hours here, I'm done. That didn't add up to 7, did it? Oh yeah, no, it did. Okay, you know what? Good job for doing some math. That's it for all of our knitting and crochet superpowers. Again, I would love it if you would leave any comments down below, just letting us know if any of these things are things that you can do or maybe that you're working on. And if you have a special knitting and crochet superpower, I think you should brag about it and let us know down below, because we are the place that is going to understand you. You can't just go into the general public and say, look at me, I can knit without looking. They're gonna be like, cool. So we're the place to make you feel good about it. So if you're going through the comments down below, let people know that you're impressed with them. Give them a little heart, give them a little love. Let's build each other up in this video today. I sure had fun seeing all of your knitting superpowers. And if you want to be in a video like this, make sure you're following me on Instagram. I'm at Knitty Natty. I'm going to be doing a few more videos like this where I am going to ask you some questions and share answers from our community and react to them. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!